let's cover media queries and how to make your website or project you're working on responsive. I've gone ahead and set up this project. I have 4 examples I want to cover today to give you an idea of responsive design. And in my project folder, I have CSS and HTML files. So essentially one CSS for every one HTML file that I want to touch on. The first one is just general responsiveness. So if we go to the browser here, for example 1, we have just a normal box. In the HTML, you'll just see that as a div element with the class of box, and then I have CSS associated to that. You'll notice that I link to it, an external style sheet. You'll notice also a reset CSS, and that's just to neutralize the styles in the browser. You can just essentially ignore that for the most part. And then you've got, the CSS, which we're going to talk about. So super basic. If we hop into the CSS for this example, we're essentially doing, for this example, to make it responsive, we're using a media query. And how media queries work is you have, different breakpoints based on different screen sizes. So if we go to the browser here, how do we actually make this change color? This is what's happening. So based on different screen sizes, the color's changing, and I want to go over that. So generally, when you're doing responsiveness, you want to work from mobile or the smaller device sizes and then work your way up to the larger screen sizes. Unless there's exceptions, if you have, primarily most of your users who are visiting your website or this application or platform you're building is going to be on desktop, then you can, argue that you want to work from desktop and work your way down to mobile. But for the most part, generally it's easier, it's better. There's a lot of advantages from starting at a small screen size and then building your way up in terms of just like adding the selectors and the rule sets for CSS. So with that in mind, with media queries, we're starting off with mobile, just styling the box. And right now it's going to be that orangish color. So this orange color here. And then we're adding the media queries. So we have a media query for tablet and we have a media query for desktop. Now to do a media query is you specify with the @ symbol, this little a, followed by media, and then in parentheses you're going to specify essentially at what point you want this breakpoint to happen. If you were going desktop down to mobile, we could use something like max width, but in this case we're using min width. So as the screen size reaches a minimum width of 800 pixels, which is the tablet example that we're doing, you want the color to be this like pink, this pinkish red color, like so. And you'll see that as we hit that 800 pixels, you'll see that color change. CSS works from top down. Another thing to keep in mind, CSS works top down with media queries. So we have the mobile, all of that being applied, then we have tablet, and then we have desktop, as you see here. So same thing. One thing you'll notice here as well is all of the styles that aren't adjusted in the media queries are still applying. So the box still stays a box. The only thing is changing is the color. And so that's something really beneficial, is that you only need to use, as we get into these other examples, you only need to specify what's different about the other screen dimensions, or the other, using media queries, what's different about them. So that's just example 1. So at media, parentheses, in this case we're using min width, and then specify the breakpoint that you want the responsiveness to happen. Okay, perfect. So that's example 1, like so. Now, example 2, I want to kind of go into a bit more detail about what else we can do. So if we go to our next example, sizing. Okay. So sizing, we have same exact thing. We have a box, and in this time we're changing this size. So let's explore that a bit more. So essentially the same thing here. We've got the styles for the mobile. We've got the 2 media queries using at media. None of that, all that stays the same. Nothing's changed. The only difference is we're starting to add a bit more styles, as I mentioned. So background color, that's all stay the same, but now we're adding a bit more styles for the boxes. We say, hey, as our screen size gets bigger, we've got more real estate, so let's make this box bigger. Let's give users what they want, a bigger size. And you'll see that here. So we have width and height 400 pixels, width and height 500 pixels, and then width and height 600 pixels. So you'll see that change. And generally, like when you get into bigger screen sizes, you're going to want your container or whatever your element that you're working on often is going to be a larger format, maybe rearranged in a different way, but in this case we're just increasing the size. Okay, now the next one we can go to is going to be alignment. So instead of one box, let's say we had 3 boxes or 3 sections on our website. A great way to align boxes or containers on your website, let's say this was, different reviews customers had that you had on your website. It could be a lot of different things, and you want to organize them a different way based on whether it's desktop, tablet, or mobile. So with this example, if we go to the HTML, we have 3 boxes. Nothing's changed. It's just that we added 2 additional boxes. If we go to our CSS, you will see that we've got the 2 media queries, and we're now working with what's called Flex or Flex Box. So Flex Box is really helpful with alignment, and on mobile you're going to have very narrow screen. You don't have a lot of real estate to go in a horizontal arrangement, and so we essentially specify, we say, hey, we want to use Flex, and we want the Flex direction to be a column. So we can go back to, let's go to the mobile. So mobile is going to be a column format because we don't have a lot of real estate here. As we get more real estate, we're going to change it to a row, as we'll see here for both tablet and desktop. So all I've done is added, in addition to .box, the class, I've added the body, which is the container for the box. And I've said, hey, let's change it to now row because now we have more space. We can take advantage of that, and let's switch it to row here. So that's what we're doing here. And you'll notice also desktop is row. So even though we're using a desktop media query, it's not necessary to specify flex direction row because it's just taking what's already from tablet, and we don't need to specify it twice. So as I mentioned, this is just a continuation of what we talked about. The styles from the smaller sizes will continue to go up to the higher sizes unless you decide it differently, unless you specify. And so we specified differently for tablet, which means anything higher than 800 pixels will apply unless we say otherwise. And so we're seeing that here. So that's another example of media queries and responsiveness. And the last one, I wanted to do more of a, everyday example. So something like a form here. So this is the final example. It's now getting a bit more, realistic of, you could have a form, you could have a blog page, you could have an article, you can have a navigation bar. All of these things are going to be responsive based on the screen size. And so we have a form here. It's a very, very straightforward form. We see that here, instead of a box, we're using a form with the class of box, and we have 2 form fields, one for name and one for email, and then we have a submit button. So super simple form, and we want to make this responsive. And so if we hop into the CSS, let's get a breakdown of what exactly is happening. So a couple things here. So if we view it in the browser, let's just look at what's happening. We have a form. For smaller screen sizes, we have name and email on top of each other like a column. And then when we expand, it's turning into a row, name and email, followed with a submit button because we have more real estate, we have more space. So let's understand what exactly we're doing here. So for the box, for the form, we specify a fixed width, 400 pixels. Because we're using display flex, this box, as you'll notice, it's 400 pixels, like so, but then as we shrink, because it is a flex item within a flex container, it's going to adjust as well. And so that's going to shrink, and on top of that, we've also set the fields within the box to 100% width. So the submit button has 100% width here, the name and email are 100% width as well, and so 100% of width means it's going to take up the maximum space it can. Of course, we have some padding here, but it's taking up that maximum space, and with it being a flex item, it's going to shrink, but the fields are going to take up that maximum space as much as possible here. And so that's that shrinking happening just on mobile before we even get to the media queries. So using not just media queries, but also percentages, using M's and REMs, different sizing tools, you're going to have also responsive that way as well, and using Flexbox. Now when we hit 800 pixels, that's when things change to that row, and we can go to that here and understand what exactly is happening. So we don't have a media query for desktop. We just have a tablet just to make it simple. We're just talking about a media query. Once it hit 800 pixels, we're going to now add flex to the box. So previously just the body was flex. We see that this box, the form is just just a standard block element, border box, nothing about flex. Now all of a sudden we've added flex, and we've also wrapped the elements, and we've done a couple flex styles here, flex adjustments. So let's kind of break this down. So with flex, there's some cool things you can do. So you've got the flex wrap, which means when the form fields take up all the space or the width, fall to a new line. So you've got name, email, and submit. Once there's no more space, fall to the new line, and you see submit fall to the next line. You see also you see nth child 1 and 2. That is referring to the form fields, so name and email. We're saying, hey, flex 1, and flex 1 is essentially taking up that available space equally distributed for name and email. Expand as far as you can go, and since there's 2 form fields, they're going to take up equal space. And then we have the submit button at flex basis 100%, which is taking up the full width. And so since submit takes up the full width and name and email take up flex 1, you're going to see both of those on the first column, or sorry, the first row, and then submit is on the second row. And so it's just a little bit more advanced, just in terms of we're still using a media query, and we're specifying, hey, we want some changes to happen. The form still looks the same. The only difference is instead of 1 column, we now have two rows essentially of details, or instead of 3 rows, we now have 2 rows because we've switched name and email to be on the same row. So that is the power of responsiveness. That's the power of using media queries. Just as an example, you can use this for your website, for your project. Definitely as a reminder to use go mobile first and work up to tablet then desktop. It's often much easier, especially with styles like flex, but it's always based on the project that you're working on and considering your user in mind, making sure it's accessible for that user. So that's it for today. Thanks so much for watching.